I'm Zoey, and I'm anorexic. I'm 19 years old, and I'm 5'7", and I weigh 35 kilos. And my mom says I'm ugly. I agree I'm not very pretty. I have nothing but bones and skin. How did I get like this? Honestly, I can't remember. For some reason, I'm blindfolded. For some reason, it seems that I was born, grew, and then suddenly became like this. I wasn't interested in how I got to this point. I was more concerned about how to get out of it. With this inquiry, I decided to go to a school counselor. Mrs. Byrne worked for us for about a year. I liked the fact that our school counselor was a young, pleasant woman. She gave me more time than everyone else, and also, all our conversations remained confidential. She didn't even say anything to my mom or anyone else. She had no idea before that I was anorexic. I went to her myself, and I took off my 10 sweatshirts and t-shirt, even though it was summer outside. She asked if I was hot in that, but I said I was comfortable because, first of all, I wasn't actually hot. I was freezing all the time, and secondly, it helped cover up my thinness. Everyone knew I was thin, but they never saw how thin I really was. Everything was difficult for me in my condition. Walking, lying down, standing for a long time, and I hardly ate, often drank water, could eat one small can of yogurt all day, and that was it. If I forced myself to eat more, I immediately vomited. One day when I was changing my clothes, my mother came into my room. This happened about a year ago. At the time, I'd lost weight rapidly for reasons unknown to me. My mother saw me and started yelling at the whole room that I was ugly. At that moment, something inside me gave me such a painful tingle. It was not from the pain in my stomach. It was something deeper, something in my soul. I thought that since my mother didn't like me, it was time to do something about myself. But as luck would have it, I lost my appetite even more. I began to eat even less and lose weight even faster. My mother would grab my hand and make me eat the entire plate of food. If I refused, she would slap my hands, but she didn't see the pain I was in afterward, sitting on the toilet for hours, suffering from undigested food and vomiting. I lost another kilo, and then another, and went to a psychologist. Mrs. Byrne often asked about my mother, but I loved her with all my heart, so I talked about how wonderful she was. Then my psychologist wanted to talk to her, but I said my mom was very busy. She was. She worked a lot because I didn't have a father. Byrne asked if my mom had any boyfriends. I didn't understand what that had to do with the topic, so I refused to answer. Although something inside gave me a big ache, something in my heart area. Byrne said she wouldn't push it and handed me a piece of paper that outlined a couple of ways to improve my appetite. And you had to start small, like getting into the habit of eating at least a little breakfast. To observe the dynamics, she advised me to record the results. She took out a camera and asked me to undress my shirt. So I did. Stood against the wall and she took a picture. The moment the flash blinded my eyes, I closed them and remembered something. Then I went home. The next day, Byrne came up to me. She asked me how I was doing and invited me into her office. I sat down and began to tell her that everything was fine, that I had eaten a little in the morning and my mother was happy. The psychologist asked me about yesterday. I asked with surprise, "And what happened yesterday? Don't you remember anything? You gave me a prescription and I went home. Why? You don't remember anything?" "No." The psychologist wrote something down. Then she wished me luck and I left. In the evening, my mother made me eat again. I ate and someone came home. It was her boyfriend. We said hello. Mom said they were about to take a shower and go to the movies. Mom's boyfriend was a photographer. I asked him how his work was, and he bragged about his new lens and then offered to take my picture. I sat down in my chair happy. Flash. He took my picture and I went into the other room. My mom came up to me before she left. She seemed angry. When I asked her why, she said that I was making fun of her, that I had no right to do that, and that I was ugly. I didn't understand anything, but just in case, after they left, I went to eat through sheer force. When I went to the bathroom, I was again suffering from pain in my stomach. Then I noticed how much hair had fallen out and one tooth had chipped off. I was in a state of shock. I had no choice but to call Byrne and tell her everything. She came to me in the middle of the night and calmed me down, gave me some pills, washed my face, and put me to bed. I felt so good at that moment. She asked again about my mom's boyfriend, and I told her that he was a photographer and that they were now out on a date. "Has he photographed you, even once?" she asked me. I said he had. Then she asked for the pictures, but I said I didn't have any for some reason. She left me in the room and asked if she could use the computer at home, and I said yes, and she found something there. I went to the computer and happened to see pictures I'd never seen before. I was in a terrible state, in tears and bruised. I looked at my body and saw the abrasions. I was frightened. I said I didn't remember anything. I got dizzy and finally remembered something. They were fragments of memories, only it seemed to me as if they weren't mine, but someone else's. And they were very scary, frightening, full of pain. I cried. Byrne hugged me, and then she sat across from me and told me to pack my things and come to her house. I did as she said. I packed my bag, but just before we left, we ran into my mom and her boyfriend. They freaked out and started asking who she was and why she was taking me. The psychologist shielded me with herself. Mom started yelling that she was going to call the police, and Byrne said she'd called them herself.
"How dare you?"
yelled Mom's boyfriend.
"And you shut up, you freak,"
said Byrne.
"You, both of you were bullying the child. She didn't used to be like that. She was complete, right? What did you do to her? I found the pictures. I'll show them in court. You've been starving her. I found a video of you, Mom, telling her how fat she is, and your man says she doesn't fit in the frame. Did you know that the flash of the camera gives her epilepsy attacks? And did you know that after that, her memory wipes out, but her subconscious remembers everything? Her brain desperately resists painful memories for the simple reason that you are her mother,"
yelled Byrne. I listened to this as if it weren't about me. I was scared, my body ached, and I felt nauseous. Byrne kept talking about how my mother was a monster and that she'd brought me to this state. And then my mother exploded. She started talking about how men hadn't looked at her before because her daughter was too fat and that she was ashamed of it. That after she met her boyfriend, he started saying I should be put on a diet and they were both starving me just to make me a little prettier. I looked at them and I couldn't believe it. I fell to the floor, but I didn't lose consciousness. I was suddenly terrified to be in this house. Byrne was holding my hand in such a way that it nearly broke a bone. She pushed my mother's boyfriend and ordered him out of her way. He swung his arm, but Byrne fought back. At that moment, I remembered my mother hitting me, not giving me food, and my obsession with my figure. Every word of my mother's disgust, every word about my figure made me nauseous, and I began to lose weight. 5 minutes later, the police arrived. Mom and her boyfriend were arrested. Byrne took me in. I stayed with her for a while. I was dragged to courts, to the station. Byrne hired a lawyer, and they both got sued for abusing me. I felt terrible. I couldn't believe my brain was so adapted to the pain. Finally, after 3 months, we won the lawsuit. They rewrote the entire estate to me as compensation, and they both got jail time. Afterward, Byrne took care of me thoroughly. She treated me in all kinds of ways, but you know what helped the most? She loved me. She became my sister and got custody of me. It's been a long time since then, but this morning I woke up for the first time and made breakfast for the two of us, which I ate with great pleasure. The scale was plus 2 pounds, and that's our victory.
Hello everyone, my name is Christina, and my dream came true since childhood, to have big breasts. I myself cannot believe that I have achieved the goal, but it is so. Now I will tell you everything in more detail. I am waiting for your comments under the video, and from your side, like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll start with the fact that when I was little, I liked to try on adult outfits. I loved to spin for hours in front of the mirror, imagining that I was going somewhere beautiful at a chic event and everyone was admiring me. Once my mother was changing in front of me and I noticed her breasts. I was wondering why I don't have them, and my mother just said that they will grow up. I couldn't believe that I would ever have such beautiful breasts like hers. Mom put on a black bra and a black blouse. It looked just awesome. I asked what a bra is for, and my mother said that it emphasizes the breasts. Plus, it is an important attribute of any girl. I lit up, asked to try some on, but she just laughed. And when my mom left, I immediately reached into her locker, took another one, tried it on myself, and it looked ridiculous. At that moment, I really wanted my breasts to grow faster. I began to dream about it. What was the first thing I did? Of course, I went on the internet, where I read methods for breast augmentation, but I needed them to grow first. When I was 11 years old, I felt a strange sensation inside me. The place where my chest should be, it hurt. I felt some seals and complained to my mother. We went to the hospital, where they told us that my breasts were starting to grow. This news made me so happy. Could I also wear beautiful underwear? I waited for a whole year, 2, 3, and my breasts certainly grew, but it was not what I wanted. They were little. My mother told me to be patient and not to rush things, assuring me that everything has its time. But I couldn't wait to get my mom's bras. I went back to the internet and started looking at recipes for breast augmentation. One of the safest comments on the forum was, "You should eat cabbage." Well, then you understand what I did? Yes, I ate this vegetable for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't really like cabbage, and when I sat on the cabbage menu for a week, I was already starting to feel sick at the very thought. Plus, I was experiencing eternal bloating. I didn't know that this vegetable could smell so bad. I had a hard time and I gave it up. I then came across another ad on the internet that said breasts can be enlarged by operation. Of course, the advertising looked spectacular. The pictures before and after were inspiring, but damn, I wasn't 18 years old yet. And who will give me such money for my chest? In addition, you need to be examined, and this requires parental permission. My mother will definitely not give it to me. She will call me crazy. Then I was looking for something else, and I found it. Some clinic raffled off breasts. It was something like an auction, but you needed to go through a couple of stages of participation in a competition. I realized that this was my real chance. I immediately registered on the site, wrote a letter, indicated my goal and preferences. I wanted a size 3 breast. I thought it would fit me. So what's the big deal for me? After all, I knew I would also grow, but I wanted ready-made breasts. I did not want to have to wait. The first stage was to subscribe to all your accounts on the clinic's page, write comments, make reposts, and so on. It was the easiest. The second one needed money. I do not know the exact amount, but the starting price of the breast was $200. I know it's not much money compared to how much the operation actually costs, but I didn't even have that money. The auction was scheduled in 3 weeks, and this meant that I had to collect this amount and more than the starting amount in a short time. I immediately ran to look for a part-time job. First of all, I agreed with my mother that she would pay me $5 a day for housework. She knew I hated cleaning, but she was interested in my suggestion, so we agreed. This meant that in 3 weeks, I could earn $105. A little, but better than nothing. Now I came home and quickly did my homework, then started cleaning, then ran to the neighbors and walked their dogs. I sold lemonades, cookies a couple of times, cleaned the yards of my grandmothers in the district, for which I also received money. Plus, I asked my father to give me money for my future birthday and give me the gift in advance. He agreed, giving me $50. In general, I was getting closer to the goal and it was good. 3 weeks seemed like a hell of a lot, but I respected myself for having managed to save as much as $450. I was afraid to go alone, so I took a friend with me, and we went to the auction. The day before, I was very worried and nervous. I even thought that I might have changed my mind. The realization that I would voluntarily go under the knife was frightening, but I was striving for a dream, and beauty requires sacrifices. Investments were sobering. So we arrived at the appointed place and looked around in surprise. I imagined a decent place with a lot of people, a large hall where, in addition to the breasts, perhaps something else would be played. But it was a terrible neighborhood. There was a garbage dump nearby. Even rats ran through it. Cheryl, my friend, asked if we were here, but unfortunately, we were. We knocked on the iron door. It was opened by some guy who asked who we were and why we came. I said that we came for the auction, and he opened the door and invited us inside. I was uneasy, but we went in anyway. The hall was more like a venue for a gathering of dirty rockers. It stank terribly. It was dark and suspicious. But I thought that maybe they do it on purpose. Suddenly they have such a style of work. Surprisingly, I was the only one of the participants. I was immediately asked how much money there is. I called the amount, and they took the money and gave me a certificate. Congratulations! Thanks to the certificate, you will be able to have the operation performed in our clinic. And that was all. They explained that since there were no people, I was the only one who wanted to, and so I won. I came home happy, but there was still some doubt inside. My mother came into my room and saw the certificate. What? What is this? I told her everything as it was. My mother sat down on the bed and said, "My daughter, you have been deceived." What? It can't be. They even have their own website, I said, but when I went on the page, it no longer existed. You're lucky they didn't do anything to you. You should have told me, my mother said. I was very upset. I cried. I was sorry for the money, but nothing can be fixed. I've learned that lesson forever, but my breasts are still growing. I hope they will be the way I want them to be.